What's up, YouTube? JD Horror here. This is a little compilation for you guys of 6 little horror stories that I wrote. I really hope you enjoy, and if you do, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new posts. Anyway, let's get into the creepy. Number 1. The Time Traveler Who Destroyed the Future. My name is Jason. You don't need to know my last name. I'm a time traveler from the year 2115, and in my time travel has become a popular form of entertainment. People pay large sums of money to travel to different eras and witness significant events firsthand. This isn't really my story, but one of a wealthy businessman named David. He decided to travel back to the 1920s to witness the infamous St. Valentine's Day massacre. He booked his trip with a reputable time travel agency, the same one I use actually. The day his trip was scheduled, he eagerly awaited his departure. When David arrived in the 1920s, he was immediately transported to the scene of the massacre. He was intrigued by what he was seeing and decided to go in for a closer look. Then, he watched in horror as gangsters gunned down their victims in cold blood. But as he was taking it all in, he suddenly noticed that one of the gangsters had spotted him. This is a big no-no for us travelers. The whole point is to observe, but not be seen or make any changes to the timeline. David quickly realized his mistake. He had failed to take into account the dangers of not following the rules. And now, he was in grave danger, but he had no idea how bad he had screwed everything up. And not just for him, but for everyone in my time. The gangster approached David, pointing his gun at him. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. David tried to play it cool, but it was clear that the gangster was suspicious. Suddenly, there was a bright flash of light and David felt himself being pulled back to our time. He thought he had escaped the danger, but when he returned, he quickly learned that his actions had dire consequences. The gangster had followed him back through the wormhole that's created when you rip through time and space. And now, the gangster was wreaking havoc in the year 2115. David soon realized that he had unleashed a terrible monster upon the world. A monster who would stop at nothing to get revenge for what he perceived as betrayal. As he watched the world being plunged into chaos, David knew that he had made the ultimate mistake by not following the rules of time travel. I picked 2023 for my final jump because this is the year David's grandfather was born, and when I kill him, that should restore the timeline of the future. My timeline, where I watched the start to the end of the world. Number 2. From Man to Monster. There was once a man named Jack who lived a normal life. He had a wife and kids, a good job, and a love for outdoor activities, but one day, Jack began to feel strange. He had uncontrollable anger outbursts and found himself craving raw meat. Soon after, his appearance started to change. His once blue eyes turned to a deep red and his fingernails grew longer and sharper. Jack's wife began to worry about him and sought medical help, but the doctors couldn't find anything wrong with him. As time went on, Jack's transformation continued. His skin became scaly, his teeth grew jagged. His mind was consumed by the need to feed on flesh. And before long, he was hunting like an animal. People in town began to notice the strange occurrences happening around them. There were missing pets and livestock, and townsfolk were becoming wary of their once friendly neighbor. Jack's family was at a loss for what to do. They feared for their own safety and the safety of the community. One night, Jack's wife woke up to find him gone. She followed his trail into the woods and came upon a horrifying sight. Jack had fully transformed into a monster with razor-sharp claws and teeth. He had disturbed a group of campers who were cowering in fear as Jack devoured one of their friends. Jack's wife tried to reason with him, but there was no longer any trace of humanity left in him. The town decided that something had to be done to stop the monster terrorizing them. A group of brave men banded together to hunt him down. They tracked him to his hiding place and engaged in a violent battle. In the end, the monster that was once Jack had ripped apart the posse sent to kill him. The town, or what's left of it, now lives in fear. They know that they're not safe from the monster I've become. Number 3. The Haunted Cradle. There was a town in the countryside that was home to a supposedly haunted baby cradle. The story goes that a long time ago a woman became pregnant out of wedlock and was shunned by her community. In desperation, she stole a cradle from a nearby family to use for her unborn child. However, tragedy struck and both mother and child died during delivery. For years, the cradle went unclaimed and eventually found its way back to the original family. Then strange things began happening whenever a baby was placed in the cradle. They would cry uncontrollably, refuse to sleep, and sometimes even have unexplained injuries. Terrified by the strange occurrences, the family disposed of a cradle by leaving it in an empty lot near the center of town. As word spread about the haunted cradle, the parents in the town began avoiding it altogether. But one young couple who had just welcomed their first child couldn't afford anything else, and were desperate to find a place for their baby to sleep. Against their better judgment, they decided to take the cradle home. At first, everything seemed fine. The baby slept soundly, and the parents breathed a sigh of relief. But as the night wore on, they heard strange noises coming from the room the baby and cradle were in. A low moaning sound as if someone was weeping could be heard throughout the small house. The baby suddenly woke up and began crying hysterically. When the parents lifted him out of the cradle, they noticed he had strange marks on his forehead. It looked to be a handprint, but there was no one in the room to have possibly made it. Foolishly, they just decided to move the baby and cradle into a different room, and reluctantly tried to put the incident out of their minds. The mother woke up to more hysterical crying at exactly 3:15 a.m. She rushed to the room to console her child, but the door was jammed shut. Both her and her husband, now pounding and kicking at the door, frantically trying to get in, noticed that the house had grown silent. The door slowly swung open, revealing a shrouded white figure of a woman holding the child. Their eyes met for an instant before the ghostly figure, along with their newborn, vanished into thin air. The couple immediately returned the cradle to where they had found it, praying that the baby would be returned. Unfortunately, that last glimpse of the child would be the last they ever saw of their beloved son. Once again, word spread around town, and a decision was made to burn the cradle. The thing is, although made of wood, it refused to burn. The cradle still remains in that empty lot to this day, waiting for another unsuspecting family to fall victim to its curse. Number 4. The Cursed Journal. It was a stormy night in July, and I was wandering down the abandoned streets of a small town with nothing but a flashlight in my hand. I was exploring an old, rundown house that many believed to be haunted. As I rummaged through the old possessions left behind in the rubble, I stumbled upon a journal that had been hidden away in a corner. I opened the journal and I couldn't believe what I had found. It was full of detailed predictions of future events, dates of horrible things that had yet to happen, as if they had already been written. It had details about disasters, wars, and plagues, all with striking accuracy. At first I didn't believe what I was reading, but as the predictions began to come true, I became more and more terrified. One of the predictions was about a plane crash, and a few weeks later I heard the news that a plane had indeed crashed, killing hundreds of people. One of the predictions was about a plane crash, and a few weeks later I heard the news that a plane had indeed crashed, killing hundreds of people. As I continued reading through the journal, I realized that every single prediction was coming true. I tried to stop myself from reading, but curiosity got the best of me. The journal had detailed descriptions of numerous personal disasters that were going to happen to not only myself, but the people I knew and loved. I had to do something. I took the journal to an old wise woman who was rumored to possess supernatural powers. She examined it and explained that it was in fact cursed. She warned me that I had to destroy it, or it would be the end of me. I tried burning it, but it wouldn't burn, so I tried burying it, but it kept resurfacing. Eventually, I realized it was never going to leave me alone. The predictions became more and more sinister by the day, and I knew I had to act fast. So I packed up my bags and fled town, hoping that would keep me safe, but my efforts were in vain. The journal predicted that I would die a horrible death, but the date on the page was blank. I tried everything in my power to avoid my fate, but it seemed predestined. One evening, as I sat alone in a run-down motel room, I opened the journal to the page that predicted my demise. It had changed and was now reading that I would die sitting alone in a motel room. The date revealed itself, and it was that exact day. A burst of haunting laughter filled the small space. As I lifted my gaze from the page, a young girl sat in the corner, eyes black as coal with a horrified expression on her face. She let out a giggle and my vision went dark. Consciousness returned to me as paramedics were zipping up my corpse into a body bag. All I could do was watch from above. The look on the face of my rigid, contorted body was a horrible grimace of fear, and only blackness peered back at me from my once blue eyes. I am now forced to stay confined to this room and write tragedies of things yet to come until another curious victim decides to read the pages of this cursed journal. Number 5. Emily's Imaginary Friend. There was a little girl named Emily, and she was an only child and spent most of her days playing alone. That was until she met her new imaginary friend, Tommy. Tommy was the perfect friend. He always made Emily laugh and never left her side. Whenever she was lonely, he would come by and play with her. They would go on adventures and explore the world outside Emily's bedroom window. Emily's parents thought it was cute at first that their daughter had made an imaginary friend. They even set a place for him at the dinner table. But as time passed, things started to get strange. Emily would come home with new bruises and cuts, and she would always blame them on Tommy. Her parents grew worried, and they tried to convince Emily that Tommy wasn't real. But Emily refused to listen. She said that Tommy was her only friend and that he would never hurt her. Then one night, Emily's parents heard their daughter scream from her room. They both ran toward the cry. They burst through the bedroom door and were shocked to find a pair of bloody scissors in her bed. Emily wasn't there, but in her place was a note from Tommy. It read, "I had to do it. Emily was getting too old for me. I need a new best friend." The next day, the young girl was reported missing from the neighborhood. Police searched the area and, eventually, they found Emily's body buried in the woods behind her house. Tommy was nowhere to be found. As it turned out, Tommy wasn't an imaginary friend after all. He was a serial killer preying on young children who felt lonely and isolated. And Emily was just one of his many, many victims. And to this day, Tommy has not been found. Number 6. The Carnival of the Undead. I used to live in a small town in the middle of nowhere. Not long ago, it was hosting its annual spring carnival. Excited children and families gathered on the fairgrounds, eager to ride the Ferris wheel and bumper cars, win stuffed animals, and devour cotton candy. As the sun set and darkness crept in, a strange feeling settled over the carnival goers. The air grew chilly and the carnival went dark. The happy shrieks of the riders, quirky tunes of the games, and the familiar carnival music were slowly replaced by an eerie silence. It was soon broken by an ear-piercing screech, and the carnival roared back to life. The music and sounds took on a sinister tone. The ride operators, now gaunt and pale, with lifeless black eyes and limbs that seemed to snap and bend in unnatural ways as if poorly pieced back together. The popcorn turned stale, the cotton candy dripped with a sticky red liquid that smelled of iron. The carnival of the undead was ready to feast. And so it did. Horrified screams of terror erupted as the townspeople tried to flee, but the carnival seemed to have no end, with twisted tents and endless corridors leading only to dead ends. The undead forces seemed to be closing in relentlessly. It seemed there was no escape. One by one they were attacked. Men, women, and children were torn apart and devoured. The twisted faces of the carnival staff were now painted with blood, and flesh hung from their gnashing mouths. The cries, screams, and demonic music rolling over the hills sounded so joyous in the cool night air. As the morning sun rose, so did the bodies of the victims of the undead. One last primal scream echoed throughout the town as the carnival vanished into thin air without a trace. No rides, no prizes, no cotton candy, and no corpses. No corpses, no. You see, we're staying at the carnival, and our next stop just might be your town. We'll see you soon. What's up, YouTube? JD again. I really hope you enjoyed this compilation of little mini stories. I had a lot of fun writing and reading them, so if you like these stories, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new content. And if you have any ideas for stories, I'd love to hear them. All I need from you is go down to the comments and write a fairly descriptive title and a couple character names, and I'll bang out a short story and it'll be on the next video. Share this around and let's make some creepy content together. Let's see what you guys come up with. I love you guys. Ciao for now.